Alright guys, I hope you're all doing well and welcome to this community showdown. It's going to be the Vampire Coast led by Alexander Nuts facing off against the Beastmen who shall be helmed by Leech Lord here on the Terracotta Graveyard, one of our newer maps on Total Tavern. Really cool Cathay, kind of Zhao Ming inspired. Some warpstone, some cool Cathay architecture, and a big scary desert. Now, as far as the Coast Army goes, it's going to be a lot of zombies, no surprises. It's pretty much the only cheap, cost-effective frontline they have. But the recently cost-reduced zombie pirate deckhand mobs here, these guys only cost 250 gold, so pretty damn cheap for 12,000 HP, really. And they do have 30 weapon strength, not terrible. You send them in against chaff units, and they're probably not going to win any beauty contests, but they'll hold their own. So whole front line is going to be deckhand mobs, backed up by a couple halberds and double depth guard. So it looks very much like a rush build. Normally in this matchup, I would say against Beastmen, what you normally see out of Vampire Coast is definitely not like a gun line. Beastmen are excellent at compromising a gun line between their cost-effective archers or centaurs or stock units. It's very tough to defend. You'll usually see something kind of centered around some crab play. So you'll see the Lamprey's Revenge and some amalgamation of monsters. So this is kind of in tune with the Rush of Sorts. We do have Solastra on foot, and she's pretty cost-effective here. Ghost of the Past is an incredibly good ability. You drop this behind the enemy spear line, you rampage, you kill 2 or 3 archer units. It is very, very good. And we do have Tide Call, great ability for kind of clearing out the trash units. And we do have the Crab Summon as well. The only downside of this is you have 2 Depth Guard in this build, right? You know, a unit that likes to get healed. However, they do heal themselves with the Hunger, so they're not helpless. And you have the big expensive Gallows Giant who probably wants Invocation as well. So perhaps Alexander does have an Invocaster in reserve. We'll have to see, but very cool build. Double Depth Guard, and they will grind through most Beastmen infantry. The only Beastmen infantry unit that could really go fisticuffs with them would probably be a Bestigor herd. But even still, the Bestigor herd would probably lose that. Although on the charge, they would do a ton of damage against Depth Guard, but I think their sustained stats would just falter against the sustainability via healing and anti-infantry and hard-hitting stat line. That's something that would have to be tested. Maybe the Bestigor would edge it out. It'd be close. But you never see those things anyways. Gunnery mobs up in the front. Pistols, pretty good here, just kind of poking. And again, they have a huge HP pool for their cost, 7,500 for a little ranged kind of gun unit. Ain't bad. And they can shoot into, whatever. Minotaurs, Razor Gores, big monsters, Gores. Everything here is lightly armored. So you send them up, let them shoot, and, they're going to enjoy themselves. That's pretty much it for the Coast Army. Now looking over here at the Great Leech Lord. Leech Lord going to be rocking a big Goreherd-centric army, so using the standard Goreherds rather than the very popular Zangors. And these guys are cost-effective. They got bonus versus infantry in the last patch after years of asking for it, and definitely a very nice buff to them. I mean, most dual-weapon infantry in the game have bonus versus infantry. For some reason, they were just neglected. It's kind of lore-friendly for Beastmen. Beastmen have been neglected by Games Workshop, by CA for a long time. Granted, now they're finally, probably one of the top 3 factions in the game. So they're finally letting out the happy moves for sure. But they've been neglected for many, many ages. The biggest accomplishment they have in Warhammer lore is inconveniencing a random village in the Empire for a short period of time. But, they're here to change that. They're here to party. So a lot of Raiders. Raiders are really good. Archers have always been good against Coast. And Ungors or Gores? Yeah, a little bit of both. Some Centaurs. And that is going to be the build with the big man up in the sky dropping Flock of Doom. So here in the front, we got Depth Guard surging forward. A little bit dangerous. They could be focus fired by Archers. Centaurs charging into the front line, slamming into the Zombie Pirate deckhand mobs there, doing a little bit of damage. But the Ghosts of the Past have been unleashed, and those Depth Guard, they certainly don't have any fear charging in here as the Ghosts of the Past, the fallen Bretonnian knights of old, former legends. Looking like they're going to be trying to find their way into some of the archers. We will have to see. So Depth Guard getting pretty clean, but man, they just took a lot of damage from something. But not before they mulch those Gores. They do get through the Gore herds, but lose about half their HP, so the healing's certainly going to need to be in play. Damn Knights Errant getting hit with Enfeebling Foe. Probably not worth doing, honestly. They're going to do great damage, and I think the Winds of Magic would be better suited using a Flock of Dooms. Solastra also going to be dropping another summon here, and this is a great God tier summon. It basically blockades this entire Beastmen push. 2 archer units, a spear unit, as well as Centaurs. I mean, that is a great, great position. Gallows Giant, in the meantime, eating a little bit of arrow fire, but overall has been able to apply a little bit of pressure. It does have 12 kills, and even if it doesn't do a lot of damage, it does apply a leadership debuff of -8, right? So that is synergistic with other terror pieces, and there's a Tide Call as well from the Vampire Coast. Up on the high ground, looking at the fight, many of the pistol units are still functional. The Damn Knights aren't going to be supporting them. And on the outside, Depth Guard are going to be fighting Pestigors. Not necessarily a fight they want, but Pestigors do have pretty terrible melee defense if memory serves at 25. So Depth Guard should cut them to pieces, but these Pestigors do have the armor piercing to actually do some damage to them. And you can see the Depth Guard units are taking some casualties, but at the end of the day, should be winning that fight. And we will see how it turns out for them. The passive healing on the Hunger certainly helping them stay in that Royal Rumble. Back in the center here, Vampire Coast Zombies still pushing up the archers for the Beastmen. have been able to get back a little bit. Beastmen really just need to weather this first storm. The Vampire Coast onslaught is going to be very nasty with Solastra and Crab Summons, but when they start to disappear, the Beastmen might be able to rally some of their running units. We'll have to see. But the Death Guard not doing bad, honestly performing way better than I expected. These ones still very much functional. They are getting hit by a Flock of Doom from Malagor the Dark Omen, and are going to be rotating over to intercept these Gorehurts, who are a little bit busy up on the zombie units, and we'll see what kind of damage they can do. Another Pestigore coming in, and Leech Lord with very, very good target priority. Going to be getting these Nurgle Gores into the right target, and they're going to be trying to set their stinky eyes here, their roomy eyes here on the old Death Guard, who are afflicted by the Tears of Nurgle. And now the big man, the Gallows Giant, still shooting away. Probably not more than a couple hundred value, I would wager. Actually, 500. That's really not bad. Better than expected. And here on the low ground, Solastra is a terror-causing fighter, so she's using the Throng of Enthrallment and also charming these Ungor Raiders, putting their melee attack to 0. Actually, pretty funny. But just looking to probably terror out and shut down some of those archer units. I would imagine when the Crab Summon comes off cooldown, we're probably going to be seeing one right here on top of these guys. But for now, she does terror out one of them, which is going to be relieving some of the pressure of the Vampire Coast here. Really, really good Flock of Doom there. It is going to be nailing a Zombie Halberd as well as these Depth Guard who are pretty close to dying. Centaurs being called in of Tzeentch, a really, really good tool in this matchup. They wreck Sirens, they kill Rotting Prometheans, they kill Depth Guard if used correctly, but it looks like these ones maybe charged into a gun line and ate a lot of focus fire. I don't really know what did them dirty, but even still, yeah, they're taking a righteous beating here. And the Vampire Coast is up on value pretty considerably, 4.8 against 3,000. The Bray Herd does have Malagor the Dark Omen still just kind of sitting here and casting Flock of Dooms. The low ground has been taken by the Beastmen with a little bit of an ambush. Scurvy Dogs are able to get away. Centaur is going to be trying to harry them down. And looking at the other two objectives, we do see Vampire Coast with firm control in this one. High ground's a little bit more contested. You know, both players have some stuff fighting there. And Solastra looked like she used a Tide Call, or was that a Crab Summon? It was a Tide Call to push back these archers. So yeah, she's just kind of being a nice little disruption piece. Lamprey's Revenge, very much the Butchers of Kalkengard of the Sea. Yeah, I guess the of the sea, the chicken of the sea, I suppose. Lamprey's Revenge, though, they're very tough to kill, and I'm surprised we're not seeing Butchers of Kalkengard in here. They're a very, very good pick. We do have a lot of Raiders, but it doesn't seem like the Beastmen really brought anything to deal with, like, big targets, right? We're looking at the army. I mean, Raiders are good at it, but if they get shut down, you're going to need Minotaurs, you're going to need Centaurs of Tzeentch, you know, things like that to really punch through this big armor. And here we have basic Centaurs, which are going to be charging into Lampreys, and that fight is not going to go well for them. Solastra in the backfield being very disruptive, using her Tide Calls to hail the mighty here and punish these Ungors. And as soon as her spooky thickness arrives, it is going to be terror routing these guys. They should be terror routing here in a couple seconds. And there goes the terror route. She is a spooky ghost, so she's going to be sending them running. Up at the high ground, objective number 1, owned by Vampire Coast very, very firmly. We do see Rotting Prometheans and Depth Guard still fighting, which is super impressive. A couple zombie pirate polearm mobs here holding back the Pestigores. Pestigores are, you know, not super good against, like, chaff units. They're good against armor, but if they're fighting things that aren't really armored, and especially like high number, you know, chaff units like that, it takes them a long time to get through it, in my experience. Whereas Zangor seem to be a little bit more effective at that role. Gallows Giant, still a big terror-causing piece, but Beastmen, man, they're looking a little bit rough. 5.1 against 6.4. The objectives, of course, are favored for the Vampire Coast as well. You can see here they do have the... oh, they only have the 1 cap. Okay, never mind. They're still down on points. The Beastmen somehow managed to wrestle these 2 points back, so objective 2 did go back to the Beastmen. Looks like Lamprey's Revenge did get folded up. Was there a Minotaur being called in? Oh, it was the Centaurs of Tzeentch. That's what it was. You look away for 1 second, the Beastmen just swarm in and do a ton of damage. But yeah, Lampreys did get folded up there by the Centaurs of Tzeentch. Now we got Sirens coming in as well. Centaurs of Tzeentch do magic damage, so they, like I said, can wreck Sirens pretty horribly in combat, but I don't know how many of those Leech Lord brought to the battle. Malagor flying up in the sky. It's kind of weird how a lot of these wizard characters like don't do magic damage in melee. You think like Balthazar Gelt, Malagor would do magic damage, but they don't. A little bit funky, but up on the high ground, we do see this very decisive victory here for the Vampire Coast with their Depth Guard and their Crabos. They were able to win that fight, and I would imagine they're going to come back and need to stabilize Objective 1. Objective 2 was wrestled back by the Vampire Coast. The Sirens were able to get that in tandem with the Pistol Mobs, who do have 5 capture waves, so those bad boys do provide a lot of support to the battlefield here. And it's not a situation where Beastmen can Helm's Deep, right? They're going to need to get their hands dirty, and we do see Malagor actually landing in combat, which is very ballsy. He's obviously trying to blob him up, maybe for like a Flock of Doom, but Sirens, you know, they can get there. Your damage output isn't amazing. Again, they're better, a little bit better against armor, and you're mainly paying for the terror and fast capture weight here. Solastra does have 300 weapon strength, and Malagor is going to get terror routed there. He is yet a beast. The Gallows Giant just kind of roasting a lot of these haggard units. So as the Beastmen troops do return to the battle, the Gallows Giant is using his flamethrower and cooking some of them, at least applying a leadership debuff. Looking at the value, it is going to be 6,000 for the Beastmen against 7.8 here for the Vampire Coast. Depth Guard going to be valiantly guarding that objective. Certainly not a bad idea for the Beastmen player to get some of these Raiders and move up and put some pressure on those Depth Guard. But looking back towards objective 2, I don't know if the Beastmen are going to be able to get that, pressure again, especially with the reinforcing Bloody Reaver Depth Guard. All right, so these guys are going to be nasty. Very tough to remove. And even though they are halberds, they're just kind of a generalist. They have a good enough stat line with 62 melee attack that they don't rely on their bonus first large, and they can chop through infantry as well. So they're going to surge down onto the Centaurs. Pretty good counter against them. Gallows Giant's going to be causing tons of terror. Rotting Prometheans taking a bit of a hammering from these Pestigors. That's 120 models, each of whom does 32 armor-piercing damage when they get a good envelop on you. So this is where you want the Pestigors, right? They're going to be very cost-effective here. Them fighting the crabs and also fighting the Depth Guard is where they're really going to be shining. And also the poison is very good from Pesties, diminishing that stat line of the Rotting Prometheans. The Vampire Coast holding on to the points very well. The Bray Herd does have some reinforcements swarming onto the middle, the Gore Herds, and the Bloody Reavers over chasing a little bit, but Tide Call there is going to be a nice one. Does tickle those Gore Herds and splashes them, gives them a much needed bath, which I'm sure they haven't taken in ages. Vampire Coast calling in more Depth Guard. So this guy is really the Lord of the Deeps. I know he's a very good dwarf player, but it looks like he knows how to play the old coast well. They're the dwarves of the sea, I suppose. They have cannon and artillery, and I guess they're not nearly as resilient in the infantry game. But Fellbats intercepting the Centaurs here. Depth Guard, will they survive the Centaurs? It's going to be a close one. If these Ungor Raiders soften them up a little bit and the Centaurs come up and around the back and rear charge them, I think that Leech Lord could actually maybe take that objective. And that could be how the Beastmen maybe get back in this game. Maybe with some objective shenanigans, forcing the slower, less mobile faction to kind of contest the open field. Could be hard, but man, in the middle, it's a very tough one. The Gallows Giant here is just cackling. I do think that Alexander needs to get the Gallows Giant on top of the objective just to provide the capture weight, and also having the terror, the epicenter of terror in your army be on the point is very, very important, right? So that would be nice. Just like if you're playing like a tabletop game, for example, let's say there's an objective in 40k. If you have a character who has a nasty aura, for example, maybe it removes OBSEC or whatever. I don't know what the rules are like in 10th anymore, but you would want that aura to be centered around the objective and not just out in the open where you're less likely to have a big important fight. Depth Guard grinding away, though, really massacring these Gore Herds. I mean, Gore Herds hit hard, but they don't have a good armor piercing, so the Depth Guard's, I think, 90 armor is able to endure that very well. So you got, Bloody Reaver and these guys. This is like 2,500 gold worth of infantry here, fighting just these trash house infantry that are really, really struggling. But the Beastmen do take the high ground point again, and maybe this is how Leech Lord wins the game. And this is very common for Beastmen. Vampire Coast, especially with this playstyle, they can play some mobility. Typically for mobile play, you'll see Sirens, Mourngols, as well as Scurvy Dogs to really pressure the field. We haven't really seen a lot of Scurvy Dog play coming out here. Animated Hulk's going to be cruising up, and it is, they hit hard, but they are very squishy. They only have 24 melee defense and are very weak against Ungor Raider units. A couple of these pistol mobs getting folded up, and the Beastmen are looking a little bit precarious now, looking like they're getting in there and causing a lot of havoc for old Alexander. But the high ground, Gallows Giant still using his flamethrower, so soon he's going to be running out of ammunition. 269, the blessed number, 1,700 value. That is very respectable. So things not looking bad right now, which is weird. Usually it's pretty terrible. On the low ground, we got deck end mobs moving up to the point, but the superior Beastman mobility is here to shine. We got the Gore Herds waiting for them, which will be a very, very quick one-sided fight. Bloody Reaver Depth Guard going to be heading down to the low ground objective. Depth Guard and Pistols going to be hanging here. Alexander still chilling here with the Gallows Giant. Again, I think Alexander's playing a really good game, but I do think if he was more active with his Gallows Giant, moving it onto the points, like having it up here, he might not have lost that point in the first place if he just parked that Gallows Giant up there and terror routed those units and provided a little bit of capture weight. Bloody Reaver Depth Guard have moved in. Centaurs with Throwing Axes, an excellent counterplay by Leech Lord. Leech Lord, of course, has been a top leaderboard player in Total War for several seasons. Incredibly good player. Both these guys are. I think Alexander's like rank 3 or 4 right now on our leaderboard. I don't know how active Leech Lord is this season, but nonetheless, they're both very good players. And this is the correct counter pick. Centaurs with Throwing Axes are super good against his playstyle. Honestly, man, if he had like 3 or 4 Centaurs with Throwing Axes, he probably would have dismembered this Vampire Coast build very, very quickly. But it looks like he maybe had like 1 in reserve. They didn't quite have enough. Certainly was missing the Butchers of Kalkengard, because the Butchers would counter the Depth Guard, and they would also counter the Crabs very hard. They could probably beat down the Gallows Giant, would have been certainly the WD-40, the cure-all. But looking at points, we do see Leech Lord getting up there. He is at 11-18 right now, so he's getting 2 per second here. This objective is now being contested. Celestra is moving up with her Crab Legion as well as some Depth Guard. Here in the middle, we see the Depth Guard polearms returning. That's good threat assessment from Alexander. It's very easy for newer players to just like overchase and try and catch something, but he saw that it wasn't going to be a winning fight for him and that he was going to get kited by those Centaurs. So he pulled back to the objective where he could do a little bit better and letting the gunnery mob provide some supporting fire into the Ungor Raiders here. We're going to be eating some powder. And it'd be so fun if Vampire Coast had a tabletop army. Man, if they had a gunline tabletop army for Warhammer the Old World, I would be all over that. God, oh man, my savings would be gone. That would be truly glorious. So here, Goreherd's getting cooked up by the big old Gallows giant. We do also have Celestra in here, so double terror. Not that it stacks or anything, but is going to be leading to these cows fleeing the scene. Vampire Coast aesthetic, super cool. You got a giant mech ship, flamethrower monster, and then you have all these bloated monstrosities with the anchors and cannons for arms. It's pretty great. So they're able to route him back, and as it currently stands, the Vampire Coast, if they can hold on to the two objectives, they will win. It'll be very, very close, but they will. And I think they should be able to close this one out. The Beastmen player has been scrapping incredibly well. If the Beastmen do manage to kind of capture one of these objectives, though, or this one in a hurry and hold it for maybe 20, 30 seconds, and that would be maybe something that could get them in there. But we do have some polearm mobs coming in here. Deckhand mobs trying to arrive to the point as well. I would assume Leechlord is going to be trying to get in front of him with the Goreherd, so running up in front. A little lapse in micro there. That's unfortunate. But he could have ran in front of him probably and then blocked them from getting to the objective, or at least kind of get them fighting off the point. Obviously, Alexander knows this and is going to be force pathing and trying to push through them, which you can do. But yeah, he does end up getting in front of him. Okay, that was a really good play by Leechlord. See how he gets in front of the point? So here's the thing. If Alexander was not paying attention and not microing, those guys, yeah, see, he's force pathing them through, and all you need is one zombie to touch the objective. So suddenly 10 capture weight just arrives and holds on to that. And that was really the game right there. That was a very, very big play. Beastmen somehow return once again, and they just keep coming out of the woods, man. You keep thinking they're out of the game, and then they're just swarming all over the place. Celestra going to be dropping the Song of Enthrallment, double terror monster here. Well, not monster, but Celestra is a terror-causing infantry unit. And the big scary here, the Gallows Giant, going to be using his glorious flamethrower and discouraging mechanic to hold the ground. On the high ground, Depth Guard here, able to fend off the Goreherds. Shouldn't have a hard time dealing with these guys, and also they could probably fend off the Centaurs if need be. It looks like Centaur's going to be swarming over this way. Leechlord is about to be overpassed as it pertains to points. Objective 2 here held by the Vampire Coast. And this is the last hoorah for both players, really. Whoever comes out in this middle fight, probably going to be winning this game here. I don't see too much nuance outside of that. Vampire Coast not really making any sneaky plays here, and now we have another Depth Guard coming up. So yeah, this is just pure Depth Guard, and they seem to be doing pretty well in terms of value trading. Although, man, the Beastmen pulled the value back to a very even amount. And Vampire Coast, though, should still be slightly ahead. They do have healing via the Depth Guard Hunger and the Vampiric Hunger on those units. So there has been a lot of that. So I think that Vampire Coast value right now is basically dead even. I would say that Alexander is probably up by 800 value, maybe 1,000 value tops, so probably around 800, give or take. The little Archer Fire peppering in, very cost effective. Vampire Coast has been allergic to bows since the dawn of time. It's always been one of the hardest counters against them because all their guns are outranged by bows typically, or snuck up on Ungo Raiders who have stock, and they can get better arcs of fire, whereas the guns need to shoot directly. So that's always been the business there. Centaur is getting a nice little downhill charge, but they are going to be meeting the old Depth Guard. And as a quick capture weight reinforcements, we do see Sirens moving between the 2 points. That's a good veteran play. So he's moving between objective 1 and 2, which means he can rotate to either one. So that's kind of a good initial deployment right there. Depth Guard fighting against Centaurs of Tzeentch. It's actually a really bad fight for the Depth Guard. They could lose this one. Vampire Coast, though, man, this is a little bit dodgy up here, guys. These Centaurs might be able to finish off these Depth Guard. And if the Beastmen get another Centaur out here really, really quickly on this point to rear charge these guys, they can maybe flip that point. That's a very, very dangerous one. Sirens battling versus Centaurs should be fine since they're not Centaurs of Tzeentch. Zombie Pirates here getting crumped down. Zombie Pirates there getting crumped as well. But Depth Guard maintaining their position. Gallows Giant hanging in there. And up on the high ground point, we do see the Centaurs of Tzeentch pulling back. And this is going to be the big play here. We do start to see the objective flipping a little bit. And Vampire Coast is, with Scurvy Dogs is one of their only rapid response units. But you can see those Depth Guard getting hard countered by that great weapon punch. Centaurs of Tzeentch hit super, super hard. But I think at this point, Vampire Coast can just hang in the middle. Yeah, they can. According to the old maths here, it's very, very close, man. And if this had capped maybe 15 seconds ago, it would have been a different beast, but it is going to go to the Beastmen here. The Vampire Coast just needs to hold this a little bit longer in the middle, only needs to hold for 7 more seconds, a little bit more than that, and it flips. Man, what a close game! That was crazy, with very, very dominant early trades for the Vampire Coast, but the Beastmen player just keeping persistent, focusing on those micro engagements and getting it done. Now, his opening army was good. I'm more of a fan of Zangors, but these guys, because Zangors in this matchup are good because they hit Sirens harder. And they also do have silver shields against the shooting. So I think I would go with Zangors. But yeah, Centaurs of Tzeentch are just God's Tier units. Very good. I like the Pesties. I think they're good as a contingency against the Depth Guard. And the only thing I think was missing was maybe more Centaurs with throwing axes. They're just so damn good. And finding a way to get Butchers of Kalkengard. Those units are just always good. Yeah, really good play on both sides. And hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. Really, really cool Vampire Coast build. 2600 here. Depth Guard did good. what is this? The Gallows Giant actually performing? That's not something we see every day. And yeah, that was a really fun game. So GG. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. We'll see you around. Take care of yourselves. And let me know what factions you guys want to see next. I'll do my best to oblige. Cheers.